imagine you are watching television and you hear about a crime on the news. Or maybe you are watching a crime show on TV. You may see people moving around, doing different jobs, and you also may see different types of evidence that are being collected. So I'm going to explain to you today how the police handle crime scenes. So depending on the type of scene that there is, you may need to do different procedures, but there are 4 main procedures that need to be done. So first, you need to secure the crime scene. Second, you need to search the crime scene. Third, you need to document what you found. And then fourth, you need to collect your evidence. So the first step is securing the scene. And so the filing information I got from the FBI Handbook of Crime Scene Forensics. And so first, you need to make sure that if there is a victim, that he or she does not need any medical attention before you start to go onto the scene. Secondly, you need to start taking notes, so that would be witness statements and any type of other things that you would see at the crime scene. So third, you need to establish barriers or boundaries, so that would be like ropes, crime scene tape, or cones, just to make sure that no one is disturbing the evidence. And then finally, you need to make sure that you limit the people that are walking around in the crime scene, because anybody that's walking around can ruin any evidence that is there. So you need to keep track of everybody who is going in and out of the scene. And then so after the scene is secure, then you can search the scene. And so there are 4 different ways that you can search the crime scene. There's lane, spiral, zone, and grid methods. But according to the Introduction to Criminalistics textbook by Barry J. Fisher, the 2 best ways are lane and spiral. So then after you have searched the scene, you are going to document what you have found in the scene. And so depending on the type of scene that it is, there's different documentations that can be done. But the main ways of documenting are photographing, doing sketches, and logging all the evidence that you find. So photography is the main way that the scene is documented. And so according to Dick Warrington at the Forensics magazine, photographs should be taken of the overall scene, like a big picture, but also close-up details of the evidence. And the photographs should be taken with and without evidence markers. They should be taken like before they're touched at all by anybody, but they also need to be marked so you can look at the pictures later and know what type of evidence it is. And then so note-taking is also important. You should always be taking notes at the scene, and your notes should answer the questions who, what, why, when, where, and how. So then sketching, this is usually the last step, because you need to take photographs and notes of everything that is there first before you start to sketch. And you need to measure the evidence. You need to measure the distance between the evidence and to other important areas in the scene so that you can document it correctly in your sketch. And so the first sketch you would do is a rough sketch, which is like a blueprint of the scene. So you would just mark the evidence where it is, where you found it, and then you would do like a scale to make sure that the distances are correct. And then your final sketch is based off of your rough sketch, but you may do a couple different rough sketches before you finally get it correct. And so on your sketches, you want to include as much information as you can to make sure that if you need to go back later, you can reconstruct the scene if you need to. And then so after all of the documentation is done, then you can start to collect the evidence. But before you can do anything like with evidence collection, you need to make sure that the scene is secure, searched, and documented. And then so with evidence collection, you need to make sure that you are wearing protective gloves or face masks, because you don't want to harm yourself. You also don't want to damage any of the evidence that is there. And so the different types of evidence are collected differently, but the main goal of evidence collection is to not contaminate any of the evidence while you're collecting it. And so you want to also establish a chain of custody, which is basically a log of everybody who has had contact with the evidence and where it is at all times. So the evidence collection should be prioritized. So that means that the first type of evidence is the smallest evidence, which is called trace evidence. Those are items like hair and fibers, because they can easily be lost and destroyed. And then so secondly, you would be collecting the fingerprints, which is done by dusting with fingerprint powder and brushes, and then it is lifted with like a piece of special lifting tape. And then so, as stated by the National Forensic Science Technology Center, there are 2 other common types of evidence that are found, and this is how you collect them. So, blood evidence, which is, that could be on a piece of clothing or a rag or something like that. You need to make sure that it's placed in a paper bag or some kind of storage container that allows the item to breathe, because if it is in an airtight container, bacteria or mold can grow in the substance, which would ruin it. And also firearms or other kinds of weapons are found at the scene, and so you need to make sure that they are stored in a way that they don't accidentally fire or hurt anybody else. And the packages need to be labeled and secured clearly so that they aren't tampered with at all. You need to make sure that they're secured with tape so that you would be able to tell if somebody would tamper with the evidence. In conclusion, proper crime scene procedure is important. Depending on the type of crime, different procedures may be necessary, but the 4 main steps are securing the scene, searching the scene, documenting the scene, and collecting the evidence. If any of the steps are done incorrectly, and then this case would go to court, you have a chance of losing your case due to improper evidence handling.